Hello, in just a moment, the press preview as we take a look at the morning newspapers. First, though, our top stories this evening. Theresa May has again confirmed that President Trump's state visit invitation still stands, despite protests by MPs and demonstrations in some cities tonight. In the United States, the president has defended his travel ban, but a spokesman for Barack Obama has this evening said the former president fundamentally disagrees with discrimination on the grounds of faith and religion. And Sky News has obtained video showing the commitment of Islamic State fighters locked in the battle for the city of Mosul in Iraq. Hello there, you're watching Sky News and the press preview. In the next half hour, we'll see what's making the headlines with the Daily Mail's consultant editor, Andrew Pierce, and the Daily Mirror's associate editor, Kevin Maguire. Welcome to both of you. Front pages then, one story dominating, as you might anticipate. The Metro leading with protests across the UK against Donald Trump's travel ban. The Eye also focusing on those demonstrations, suggesting there's rather a lot of blame shifting going around as to who organised for President Trump to be given an invitation to make a state visit. The Times reports that Theresa May has been told that a state visit from Donald Trump would put the Queen in a very difficult position. But The Guardian says the Prime Minister has been defiant in maintaining her offer to the American president. The FT reports there's still confusion over whether Britons with dual nationality really are banned from entering the US. A Daily Mirror investigation into Donald Trump's hotel in Washington, D.C. finds most of the amenities and supplies are made outside the US. Meanwhile, a care minister insists that people bear just as much responsibility for caring for their elderly parents as they do for their children. That's the top story, up the top in fact, in the Telegraph. Daily Mail also going with that, reporting that social insurance is being explored as an option to pay for care. The Daily Express warns that Arctic gales and blizzards could affect the British Isles for the entire month of February, while The Sun has the story of a former HBOS banker found guilty of corruption charges, while The Star opting for a story about celebrity Big Brother. So Andrew and Kevin are here to the Times straight away, and this is a letter written to the Times about this state visit.
This gives a whole new twist to the state visit, because after all it is about Her Majesty the Queen, who will welcome the President of the United States. Lord Ricketts, who I must admit I've never heard of, but he was Permanent Secretary at the Foreign Office, the senior...
For 5 years.
Yeah, but I still have never heard of him. Between 2006-2010, and then served as David Cameron's National Security Advisor. In his letter, he says it was premature to offer a state visit so soon, because he says normally you don't get a state visit in the first year in the White House, and he says, why is Trump deserving of this exceptional honour? Well, I'll tell him why, Lord Ricketts, because Mrs May's in a hurry. She's a Prime Minister in a hurry. She wants Brexit to be successful as possible. Donald Trump has indicated that he is willing to do a trade deal sooner rather than later, and unlike interfering President Obama, who said we'd be at the back of the queue, he says we'll be near the front, so that's why she's extended the olive branch. He is the President of the United States. We may not like some of the things he says and does, we may not like the way he looks and the cut of his suit, but he's the President of the United States.
But the allegation goes this evening that Theresa May knew about this travel ban incoming before she left Washington.
Well, we don't know that. But anyway, he talked about this travel ban, let's remember, during the presidential campaign. None of this should come as a surprise. He talked also about building the wall. But there was a suggestion it was going to be watered down, wasn't it? It has come as a surprise to people.
She's desperate at Downing Street, which is why she wants the trade deal, or he'll take us to the cleaners. That's what he does. He's America first, not Britain first. But interestingly now...
We'll come on to your paper in a moment.
Yeah, but interestingly, on this question of did she know, number 10, Downing Street, was claiming this morning that she didn't, which is why she looked like a startled animal in Ankara when she was asked 3 times to criticise it, and she wouldn't, and they claim she wasn't briefed. Well, now they say she did know about it, but I suppose it's how much do you know? So I can understand
and whether it matters, because it may not. But nonetheless, the protesters are on the street.
But also, she's determined not to give a knee-jerk response, which was David Cameron and Gordon Brown and all these other people. The Sky News, we've got to get on the next bulletin. She's not going to rush into things. That's quite right.
Our whole position is symbolised by him taking her by the hand and leading her and so she's never going to criticise them. And I think it's from a
I
position.
don't agree with that. What do you mean never
It's from a
criticise him?
position of weakness because
She's criticised him already.
she is desperate. And those 7 countries, no one from those 7 countries has killed anybody in a terrorist incident in the US. He's just picked them to make a political point. Spread some hate, bit of poison, fan the flames of prejudice. It's probably working for him because there's a poll in the States show most people back him. But I'm proud of the people who went out in Britain today in lots of cities, including London. In Glasgow, in Newcastle, I think Sheffield, I think I saw some in Liverpool, Cardiff.
Oxford, yeah.
But protesting because it's standing up for decency and against racism.
Kevin said that President Trump picked these countries. He picked these countries because they were on a list he inherited from his illustrious saintly predecessor, President Obama. Those 7 countries were identified by Obama as potential terrorist threats and the people who lived in them as potential terrorist threats. Now, Obama did not impose a travel ban like Trump has.
There's no evidence to.
But of course he did in 2011 impose a ban for 6 months, not 3 months like we're talking about here, 6 months on citizens from Iraq. Where were all these people then protesting? Didn't hear a word from them. They didn't take to the streets and protest about that because the difference is, I'm not defending Obama, but the difference is with rent-a-mob, they are always going to protest about right-wingers, but never saintly figures in the centre or left. And Kevin Maguire is as guilty as the rest of them because they didn't protest about Obama and they didn't protest about Obama keeping Guantanamo Bay open for 8 years in their orange.
But the protests continue,
Not in those numbers, Kevin. They never did.
The reason in Iraq,
Obama was a great big hypocrite.
If indeed it was 2011,
a great big hypocrite.
Is because 2 people were arrested in the States with Al Qaeda links from Iraq.
Yeah. So you ban a whole country for 6 months.
That hasn't triggered. Nothing like that has happened to trigger
hypocrisy.
This. It is. We know Trump was looking to ban Muslims from America. He's gone looking for countries to pick on. He's left out those where He's left out those where he has business interests, and he's also, for instance, left out Saudi Arabia, where if you go to 9/11, where did the hijackers come? Where did the terrorists and the worst case in the US history of terrorism over there? Where did they come from? They came from a country not on his list.
Why does Kevin Maguire ignore the fact that he didn't pick the list, he inherited the list from Obama? So Obama didn't put Saudi Arabia on the list. Yes, because it was on the... He inherited that list from Obama, who thought that these countries were a terrorist risk to the United States. And Saudi Arabia wasn't on that list either. Do you know why? Because Obama's in America did a lot of business with Saudi Arabia.
Andrew,
look,
you have to do better than this.
No, Kevin, you've got to stop pretending this is just about one deranged right wing, which is how you see it. The fact is, there's huge hypocrisy.
Look, I criticised Obama, for instance, over Libya. Now,
did they take to the streets in their millions, all around the world, about Obama and Iraq?
There were quite big protests in London against Libya, with also, of course, Britain and France involved.
I didn't support
it was an utter disaster. But what you do is you always just attack the left and you defend the indefensible.
You just attack the right.
You're
saying that
damaging your credibility.
Hasn't criticised
You're undermining your credibility.
Well, you don't have any, Kevin, so don't worry about it.
The only standards on the right are double.
We've done that argument.
Well, hang on, but Theresa May has criticised Obama. Sorry, Trump. She has criticised Trump.
So the difficulty is for them, they want to be friendly to Donald Trump to get a deal eventually, but do they want to be seen to be an apologist for them?
Well, they're not
And is there a fine line for Boris Johnson in the Commons today who said that his bark is worse than his bite? Well, some people think his bark is worse than his bite right now because
Look, we want to do a deal with the most important country, ally in the world. The United States is our most important ally. In terms of business, outside of the EU,
at all costs, we're going to do that?
I
mean, do we have to?
But the Prime Minister has criticised these arrangements, these travel arrangements, as has the Foreign Secretary, as has most members of the government. So what else are we supposed to do? What else are we supposed to say? So we're not going to do business with you ever again, and we're going to rip up an invitation to a state visit, which would cause the mother of all diplomatic rows and set our relationships back with the States forever. And of course, Maguire wants us to have bad relations with the States because he doesn't want a trade trade deal to be done because he wants Brexit to unravel. The left want Brexit to unravel.
Tariffs are very low at the moment with the States. What the States wants with a trade deal is to get into the NHS and is to get into British agriculture in a bigger way. And they have very different animal welfare and drugs policies. So it's going to be very difficult. I have some sympathy for
Why is it a joke?
Just a chuntering old mad lefties, and he's getting madder.
But they do put hormones
madder.
in their animals,
but we
don't
want
they?
to do a trade deal. Why don't we want to do a trade deal with the United States? Because we do 14% of our trade beyond the EU is with the United States. We want a trade deal and quick. What's wrong with that? And I think he's been having all the additives in his food. Look at him. He's lost the plot completely.
I'm going to next week.
Chuntering
next
old
week,
lefty
I am going to bring.
He is becoming a complete parody.
I'm going to bring a large bag of Werther's Originals and a rug for him.
A parody. He's a chuntering old loony parody.
It's still going on.
So, Kevin, would you cancel the state visit?
Of course he would. He wouldn't have it in the first place.
I wouldn't have offered it, but I could see why she can't, because it would be so embarrassing. You can push the time back, and I think it's fair enough to say you can't come when you've got this ban.
So it becomes December and not June, for example.
July. But the problem is when he comes, he's got a fat ego, a very thin skin. There's going to be big protests. You'll have to play the band loud. You'll still hear people.
Let's hope we
You'll have to make sure there's a big hood over the coat, so it's almost going to go wrong before it starts. We know there's a rift with Prince Charles on climate change.
So
which
can we just hope that we don't follow the example of the Labour government when the Chinese president came here, when Blair and his cronies did everything in their power to try to obscure the protesters. I suspect Mrs May, conscious of all this, will allow the protesters to vent their spleen as loud as they like.
You know that won't happen.
No doubt Maguire will be on the barricades at the front of the queue.
I criticised Blair when the cops were ripping posters down and
Live pictures of Washington outside the Supreme Court. This is Democratic congressional leaders who are leading that protest. And of course, tomorrow night we are expecting Donald Trump to make his pick for Supreme Court, which is very important because it will potentially dictate laws on things like abortion and gun control. So that will be equally controversial. So his days in office will continue to cause a furore.
Oh, we always expect it.
I mean, all presidents come in, full of vigour. Some better than others, but now he's making his mark. I think bad for America. Its reputation has been shredded around the world. If he was going to be a recruiting sergeant for jihadis, he's done his business by picking on these seven countries, because the Islamic State and Islamists want to make it a war between Islam and the West, and he's playing into their hands. It's not about security, it's about politics, and he's blown it.
It'd be interesting to see as well with the appointments to the Supreme Court if they are young appointees, because then they're going to be there for a very long time, which means he embeds them in long after he's gone as president.
Yeah. Let's take a look at the front page of the Mirror and hopefully the inside pages as well, if I've got it. President hypocrite. Trump preaches buy America.
Fair play to the Mirror. This is a great hit, actually. They've been to one of his hotels in Washington.
His newest.
It's his newest hotel. Well, apart from the fact the headboard is hideous and tacky, he's got no taste, they've checked out his America First mantra. Oh dear. Italy, China, Canada, China, India, Britain, hurrah!
Malaysia, Mexico.
And Mexico. I'm very glad that got stuff in Mexico before they put up the wall.
I know. I should have a word with Christopher Buckland, the US editor. He's got his feet on that, his shoes on that bed. I mean, that's it. But apart from that, it is fantastic because, in a way, Trump has always sold himself as standing up for working Americans, everything made in America. He's a billionaire who's used Chinese steel in his projects. He's always looked after Donald Trump first. He says, America first,
what
it's Trump first.
Why has he got all three of those lampshades on the bed? What's he doing with them?
I think that's so... I don't think he's nicking them, if that's what you're suggesting.
Looks a bit
I think
odd.
he's just displaying them. I don't think they were there.
But, I hope so.
But that is...
But this is pretty... They've been to his other hotels too, and...
But look at that, though. Look at the brass-plated bin there on the left in the middle.
Britain.
Made in Britain, yeah.
There we are, you see. We haven't even got a trade deal yet.
It's the other one that was made in Britain, a tissue
deal.
holder. Is that what I couldn't quite make it out?
We have got a trade deal with the EU.
Yeah.
Tariffs available. But £500 a night. I wonder if he's put that on his expenses. Whoa.
That's your problem, not ours. Quick look, if we can, before the break, of the story that dominates the Daily Mail and the Telegraph too, which is that we need to look after our elderly parents like we look after our children.
Yeah, David Mowat, Care Minister, said this. I think he's quite right. We all have a responsibility to our parents. Our parents bring us up. But the problem is, people in the middle, you're looking after your own kids, you've got your parents. You don't always live now near your parents. A lot of us travel for work and you move. And also, there's always a bit of me that thinks when they come out with this, it's because they've taken $4.5 billion out of social care and they've knackered the system in this country. So a lot of elderly and vulnerable people aren't getting the care they need.
It is.
So don't blame
notwithstanding that, though,
families
it has
all
to
the
be
time.
said that when we were growing up as children, certainly in my school, the Polish children, the Italian children, we were Catholic schools, grandparents always lived in the families, and that's commonplace in Muslim families too. But of course, our work-life patterns and people live longer now have all changed.
Well, often
they
women
lived
didn't
considerably
work
longer,
then.
didn't they?
Much
People would die in their 70s, and now they're
that's
dying
right.
in their late 80s.
or late.
And women didn't work, so it was often
Well, not as
the woman
not as
at
often.
home. And now you do work, and also you probably. You lived on your council estate and you stayed on your council
you
estate,
did.
and a lot
There
more
was
people
much
move
less-
around now.
Much less mobility.
Yeah. Still, it's a big bill and a
Huge.
perennial problem, isn't
And
it, really,
it's
that's not been
it's
tackled?
a ticking time bomb, it really is.
We can pay on estates from inheritance. That's the way to do it.
And actually, the Mail does say that they are examining in the Treasury social insurance schemes to try and plug that gap.
OK, still to come, time to party. Not here. We'll tell you about the couple celebrating getting through their divorce. How strange. Back with that in just a moment. Welcome back to the Press Preview, taking a look through the newspapers. I'm joined by the Daily Mail's consultant editor, Andrew Pearce, and the Daily Mirror's... Get it right. What did I
Why,
nearly
he
say?
doesn't.
I'm not sure.
He doesn't get it right.
He's an
very
associate
often.
editor.
That's the point.
Just
Kevin
calm
Maguire.
down.
Inside your paper, Andrew. I get this one right, at least, the Daily Mail.
He's going first on this.
This is a long-running
Yes.
focus for the Mail, isn't it, this story?
It is led the way on this, and it's Phil Shiner, who's a lawyer. I think it was Public Interest International, took 3,400 cases of alleged abuse in Iraq.
This is of UK soldiers.
Of UK soldiers
He
allegedly
pursued
committing
them.
crimes.
Yeah.
Huge number chucked out, £25 million inquiry. He's admitted a load of charges. He's facing a tribunal, and he now says he's too
This is a
stressed to
disciplinary
go.
hearing. They should make him go. They should make
Absolutely.
But
him
that might well be true.
It might be, but absolutely
Too
incredible.
bad. What about the stress he put the soldiers through?
I mean, that's it. That's why I've got no
Some of
sympathy
whom
for
will
him.
have post-traumatic stress. Some who saw terrible things on the front line. They'd have seen colleagues killed. They'd have seen Iraqis killed. And he was ruthlessly exploiting them. He's a disgrace to the legal profession. They should have compelled him to go to that disciplinary
Yeah,
hearing.
well, I don't think you
no
can.
sympathy.
I don't think you can, but I've got,
Well-
I've got no sympathy. But of course, cases have to be investigated. But
And
here, there was
serving
cold
colonel
calling
said,
and...
"Look, his slurs dogged my men for a decade.
Yeah.
Wicked.
Oh, well, soldiers have been put through hell by this. And that's why, when he says he's stressed, I'm sorry, you've really
Not as stressed
put
as he should be.
incredible pressure on other people who've had the finger pointing at them.
Into the Times, dancing all the way out of the divorce courts.
Well, I have to tell you, they're a bit behind the Times, because the Times are reporting now that divorce, which they say is a tragedy regarded by some as a worse experience than bereavement, now, because we're importing from America, where else, divorce parties. I went to one about 7 years ago. I won't say who, because he's quite well known, in London, in a bar, and we had a right old time. It was great fun. Although I did wonder about the taste of it. I didn't think it was particularly good taste, because there were children involved, although they weren't at the party.
There's one woman here who doubled her divorce party as a fundraiser for a local hospice.
Yeah.
But,
I mean,
it
this
sounds
woman
rather-
here is
rather
cutting a
good.
divorce cake. She doesn't look old enough to be married, let alone already divorced.
There is, if you are getting divorced, you don't want to sit at home weeping all the time. You want to get out and see a fresh start. But it's kind of getting the tone right, isn't it? You don't want to be kicking your ex too much unless they deserve it. Then it's probably fair enough.
Well, they might be at another party.
I know, yeah, their own.
But look at the other parties they say they're doing. A half-birthday baby party, and patient new parents throw parties for their 6-month-old because they're fed up. They can't wait till he's a year old, or she's a year old.
Some people
Bit
like
ridiculous.
parties.
Those was a 6-month-old
Andrew.
notices. Those was a 6-month-old notices.
Well, it's not really for them, is it?
No.
It's for the parents.
Yes.
I gave one to my 1-year-old and regretted it. It's such hard
Yeah.
work for no memory at all. So there
Yes.
we are. To the Express, and the most romantic hotel in Europe is where?
really?
Where
Really?
is in Chester, according to TripAdvisor. It's a Georgian,
Mrs.
it's a
Maguire,
Georgian
your heart's
hotel.
out. You've got a trip coming up, Mrs.
Second
Maguire.
only to a place in Thailand. Chester's a lovely city. Never been.
Fine Roman city.
Never been to this hotel, but somehow find it hard to believe it
So
really
do I.
is. I must admit.
Wouldn't we one rather go somewhere nice in Paris?
Yep.
Go
Paris.
Gay
And
Paree.
I've got one final story,
Chester.
but
Gay Chester.
Where's Parry? Is that in Lincolnshire or somewhere? Is it? Yeah.
very quickly, one final story. I'm told it's on the front of the Mirror, but I don't know which one. I presume it's Gary, is it?
It is.
Gary Barlow. That's the tax dodger, Gary Barlow.
The Tory. He got a
obviously-
big bill. Big bill.
He hasn't washed his
Cameron's
hair for
friend.
14 years. Is this because, what's that talent show, that terrible talent show he does?
Let
called?
him shine.
Let me shine.
Let
He
it
wants his
shine.
hair to shine, or perhaps he's been saving the money on the shampoo so he
Yeah.
can pay off
Pay
his
his tax bill.
It's
He's paid
natural
it.
oils are self-cleansing, Andrew.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and apparently
Try
makes
it.
it grow better.
Apparently Maguire doesn't
Here we
use
go.
soap either, let
Here we
alone
go.
shampoo.
It's very
which is
drying.
why.
Here we go.
No, I mean soap anywhere.
Here we go.
Time to go.
Do not want to
please.
go
No,
near
don't-
it. It's
yeah.
too
I
much.
will see you next week. Andrew, Kevin.
You might have washed
I'm
by
gonna
then.
sue him now.
You might
Yeah,
have
I
washed
would.
by
Good
then.
night.
Good night.